Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce, Michael, and Ivan. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests. And guess what? Today we've got an amazing guest and share personal stories of high strangeness. I don't remember what I'm supposed to say.
Have you done this before?
My head is spinning from the conversation that we just had that our listeners
No doubt.
Here. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And unfortunately, super producer Riley Bray is absent this week. He's flying in an airplane over the Bermuda Triangle. So let's hope that he makes it safely. Speaking of weird shit, which is what we do on this show, I got a question for you. Have you seen that news story that's going around this past week about the weird spiral-shaped cloud with tentacles in Alaska? This isn't a BCC news story, but there's this weird story that came out of Alaska. I've been seeing it on Instagram. People have sent it over to me of this weird funnel cloud that people thought was like smoke from a plane crash coming off a mountain in Alaska. And then it turned out to be this weird cloud formation, but it looks like it has these like tentacles.
Ooh.
End of it. I'm going to see if I can send it over to you. This wasn't planned, by the way.
Sounds kind of cool. Yeah.
Some people think it's just like a really weird contrail from a plane that made a very strange shape because of the time of day and the atmosphere. But it's very strange. A lot of people think it's some sort of like alien squid formation in the sky.
Well, that includes me too. I mean, I think our fans know where I'm going to land. So
yeah,
I don't even. You know what? I don't even need to see a picture. It's alien.
Great.
That's extraterrestrial right there.
Well, I'll put that up in the Instagram. People can take a look at it. But if you Google Alaska weird cloud thing, it'll pop up. So this week we're sitting down with producer, writer, and director DOUG HAIJCEK from MonsterQuest, and a lot more. He's more than just the producer of MonsterQuest.
Oh yeah, totally. This guy's an inventor, entrepreneur, cryptozoologist. He does it all.
And has been a subject of high strangeness on this very show.
Yes.
With the Snelgrove Lake incident, which we covered. Oh boy, I'm going to say it's been at least 3 years ago now. A famous Bigfoot encounter, which Doug talks about in our chat with him. Listen, we should just not delay this any further. We should get to it. But unfortunately, we do have to do some quick club housekeeping. Want to remind you guys, don't forget to order your BCC Records shirts featuring the logos of Club Bryce, Wolf Brother, and BJ and the Shadow Bats, all lovingly designed by James Mulholland. And all three of these shirts are available now in the BCC merch shop. So just click the link in the episode description of this podcast, or click the link in our bio on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club, or over at Twitter at Bigfoot Pod. Do us a favor, be a loyal Club Scout, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help spread Bigfoot Collectors Club to new listeners. If you do, we might read it on the air, like this one.
This is from TMV, who writes, "The Boys. I instantly perk up when I realize it's Wednesday and I'm able to listen to my boys. Their banter and camaraderie is like no other, and melding humor with serious topics is a genuine talent. 5 stars. Thank you, TMV. You're part of the club. You're a Club Scout now. You're one of them boys."
That's right. And don't forget, you can always support the show by heading over to patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub and becoming a member of The Other Side. For a $5 monthly pledge, you'll receive a minimum of 3 bonus episodes every month and a shout out right here on the show. Now, what happens on the other side, you may ask? well, let's see, more High Strangeness, more
Mhm.
Riley, campfire stories, Bryce's Secret Stash video investigations, where we look
Love
at
those.
videos that
Yeah.
Bryce brings in, and Riley and I just shit all over them.
Movie and TV Club.
Yes.
Going over new season of Expedition Bigfoot. All kinds of
Yes.
stuff. And you said it's for what? Like the price of a grande latte or something?
Oh
like
boy,
that?
it's less than a gallon of gas right now is
There you
what it
go.
is for
There
an
you go.
entire month. At least much less out here in California. And of course, we're going to be continuing our watch of Twin Peaks over there periodically.
right.
We'll be doing it in chunks. Gotta say, I love the response. I was a little, that's the first time we've basically done a TV club episode over here on the main feed.
The Club Scouts backed you, dude. I heard it loud and clear. They're like, fuck yes, Twin Peaks. Let's get into this now.
I was worried. Like, oh boy, are people going to feel like this is enough, and I was excited to see how many people were actually like, all right, you convinced me. I'm going to get into this. I'm going to watch. So now we have an obligation to the new
one
viewer.
of them.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
And also at the $9 level, still less than two gallons of gas, you'll get weekly cosmic tracks from Riley featuring music from the show and some original stuff from Riley that you will not hear anywhere else. And again, all of that can be found exclusively on the other side at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub. All right, enough with all this housekeeping. Let's hear our talk with Doug HAIJCEK.
Our guest this week is a super producer with over 270 TV features under his belt, including the hit series Monster Quest for the History Channel, as well as the groundbreaking documentary Sasquatch Legend Meets Science. He also served as tech director and consultant for Les Stroud's TV series Survivor Man Bigfoot and has been dubbed the Camera Explorer by journalists due to his incredible ability to invent and implement new camera systems, like the time in 2006 when he developed the Trojan Squid Cam, used to film the world's first free-swimming giant squid in the Sea of Cortez. At 54 feet long, it's the first and only film of a living Arctoothus duck species in the wild. He's a true maverick of cryptozoology. Please welcome to the show, Doug HAIJCEK.
Hey guys, how are you?
Doug.
Good, Doug, how's it going, man?
Wow, you are clearly the most professional guest we've ever had on this show.
We are outclassed.
That's not saying much, guys. That's not saying much.
Oh my gosh!
It's exactly not what my children would tell you.
Oh my god! How many kids do you have, Doug?
6.
Wow! No way! Oh, that's
almost
incredible.
one for each squid tentacle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got 6 kids, and most of them are grown up. I've got one just about to leave the nest here, is turning 18 in a few days, and God, glory be.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been great though.
A feat of its own right. That's really just sort of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all your accomplishments. And, Doug, I definitely cannot wait to talk to you about Bigfoot tonight, and which we definitely will. But I want to start by asking you, what is your background and why the hell have you accomplished so much?
Well, my background is basically just somebody who was probably born a little too curious. I drove my parents crazy. I was the kid that at 2, I was like Dennis the Menace. I was digging holes in the backyard, digging up window wells, doing this. I was the kid that ran away and played at the creek all day.
Oh yeah.
I was that kid. And I wanted to know everything. And then my dad kind of nurtured it, I guess, because he would take me on these watching the world go by trips and just to kind of observe things. And I would ask him questions, whether it was to a creek or just on the front stoop of the house. And so I just became real curious. And then as I got a little bit older, I literally in the summer I refused to sleep in the house.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
No, like never. Like, so I would leave I would leave as soon as the weather got a little bit warmer. I would leave and I would never come back. As far as sleeping in the house, I'd be gone sometimes 3-4 days.
Oh my
And
God.
my parents would trust me, and I'd be out in the woods and wherever.
Where did you grow up?
Up in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis,
Okay.
which in the 60s were just forests.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, creeks and hunting shacks. And they were just starting to build the suburbs,
I mean,
so
I
it
used to
was
play
pretty-
in a sewer sometimes. Not the same.
Well, not only
not
did
the
I
same thing.
okay, not only did I play in the sewers,
Oh, no.
I traveled in all of them
Oh my
and
God.
had them all mapped.
Yeah. I
So
think
I
we
could-
all I think all of us at one point clearly played in the sewer, because I definitely remember one summer where we mapped out the sewer drainage pipes that ran over the road next to my suburb. So we've all done it. We've all
That's
done
So,
it.
so in the wintertime, I could travel in these underground caverns. And I would go miles and miles. I'm not talking like I would pop out in another city.
Oh my
a
God.
young
That's amazing. I think
Yeah.
I've said this before. My mom used to make me do this thing called a check-in. So I was able to leave the house and go
Yeah.
wherever I wanted, but in 10 minutes I had to step back into the back screen door and yell check-in. So I would
Oh,
get as
okay.
far as I could go, and then I would have to come back and I would literally just yell check-in, and then I would try and bicycle off as far as I could get again, but I could never get too far. I could only get 5 minutes away. It sounds like you were traversing
It
all
was-
over.
You were
Northern
taking
America.
sabbaticals at the age of 8.
I don't want to give you the impression my parents didn't care, because they were just like the two greatest parents ever. I love my mom, love my dad. My
Yeah.
dad was my best friend. But when my dad was a kid, and I don't have any proof, but he claims he went from Minnesota to Texas at 7 years old in an old Model T with his buddy who was
Wow.
like 1 year older.
Oh my God. Smoking
Whoa.
Cherry Hills the whole way. That's
This
amazing.
is back in the 20s or whatever.
Wow.
And he claims, he told me millions of stories from that trip. And he always lived off the thing where if I stayed out of trouble, which I always did,
Mm.
there was never any trouble with the law or any neighbors or, anybody ever reporting on me, then I could have my freedom.
Wow.
And,
Never had a run-in with a tornado that maybe led to like a
Sure.
Tin Man and a Cowardly Lion. I mean, sounds like you're
No.
going on some real adventures.
No, we did. And it never ended. And I was like the only kid ever who ever had any ideas on, crazy things to do. Like I would say, hey, let's let's throw some logs together and we'll float down the Mississippi River. And we'd end up going, 75, 100 miles at age 8.
Wow.
No life jackets, no anything. And we'd somehow, we'd have a few little change and we'd call my dad. He'd pick us up downstream. There were things like, I could write a book on all the crazy
so
stuff.
great.
Please do. This sounds incredible.
Where are
actually,
you, son? I'm downriver about
There
4 days.
there is a guy actually writing a book in my life right now, and it's already so thick, and he's interviewing me and recording my stories. I don't know if it'll ever get done, but maybe it will.
Man, I was just impressed that my parents let me like cross the busy road to go see my best friend on my bicycle. I would have loved to take a river raft down the Mississippi.
You guys sound young.
Well, we're not as young. I
turned
think
a
we're
corner or
both
two.
Yeah, we're both lucky that we still grew up in the age, where my nephew, who's now 18, is like, man, I wish I grew up in the 80s like you did in the 90s and could just hit, because he watched Stranger Things and he thought that's like all we did, every summer was like ride our bikes around and defeat interdimensional entities. But we're still lucky to kind of have a little bit of that freedom on a Saturday afternoon or in the summer.
That seems to be the last vestige of it, doesn't it? Right around that, 80s, middle 90s.
Yep. So if you guys would have hung out with me and we were kids, I would say things like, hey, let's walk to Brainerd. You got to realize Brainerd was 10 miles away. And I would walk in. I maybe say to my dad, I'd say, "Hey, we're going to walk to Brainerd." He'd say, "Okay, have fun." He wouldn't even lower his newspaper. We would leave, and we'd be gone a week and a half. And these other kids, no doubt, lied to their parents on where they were. They probably said, "Oh, I'm taking a vacation with the Hajceks." and we're going to Yellowstone. Oh, and they probably, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, a lot of line went on. And it's just kind of like, don't ask, don't tell. But we would do things like that. And, those are some amazing memories. But as I got older and being out in the wild so much, I started wondering what goes on in the areas I can't see.
Mm.
What's happening below that river, this new river that I've stumbled upon, or this lake, or, whatever. And then I started thinking about that. And it's like, let's start trying to find out information. And in many cases, it was lacking. There just wasn't any. And I thought, well, maybe I can figure out a way to do it. Like an example, I built the world's first permanent underwater camera system that was going to be live on the internet, and I put it in the bottom of Lake Superior. And of course, I didn't just build a little, put a camera in there. I built this big giant thing called the Benthic Explorer. It had 360 cameras. It had microscopic cameras. It had naval multi-frequency lighting, which I think was top secret at that point. It had a fish feeding system. It had seiche meters. It had copepod collection traps. It just had all these things. It had speakers.
Doug,
so
what exactly were you looking for in Lake Superior, if you don't mind?
I was just looking for what goes on when no one's around, not like a diver going in there and disturbing the environment. I'm talking 24/7. What happens at 2 a.m, at the bottom of Lake Superior? Is there some things, some cycles of life? I just didn't buy into I didn't buy into anything I was reading. And so, of course, day one, we start witnessing a vertical migration of shrimp in Lake Superior. Mysis shrimp. Nobody knew anything about Mysis shrimp. We started documenting what they're eating. Nobody knew. Wow. We started seeing different copepods, microscopic life, and when they came active and what time of day and how they were affected by the seiche, which is an inland tide that happens in literally all lakes. But in Lake Superior, it's quite dramatic. But no one had ever seen it. And so I built these flotation tubes and I had a special camera that could watch these flotation tubes lean, to the left and then to the right with the tide, to see how long the tide, headed north and in Lake Superior. And we could document all that. And so we had that in for a whole year. But I'm building this thing in my garage, and of course the neighbors think I'm crazy already.
Yeah, are you 10 years old as you're building this? I assume.
No. But but the neighbors always thought I was crazy.
And
because I got all this crap going on all the time. But they come over. What are you doing? Oh, I'm building a camera system that's going to collect all this data in Lake Superior. Oh, okay, and they walk out. And then they would, of course, see it on the news at some point, and they'd see a big research ship, and helicopters and divers. Because I would suck all these people into my world from enthusiasm. Not that I was, some great salesman, but I was passionate. I would find all these different people to get sucked into this study, and it would get bigger and bigger. The whole thing would just get out of control eventually. And those are the kinds of things I would love doing, and just kept doing them.
Well, and you would. I was going to say you would continue to do that throughout your life because you developed not just that camera but so many others. I want to name a few here just for the people listening. Doug has been involved in the creation and invention of the deep sea cam, the holographic lens, photoreal game trail camera wraps, the oil capture cam, instant shark cam, wild dog cam, hog cam, rat cam, underwater lure cams, underwater birth cam, beaver lodge cam, bear cam, forward reverse high speed underwater camera system, and of course the Trojan giant squid cam, which your team used to film the world's first free swimming giant squid. And those aren't just names. I looked at each one of those cameras, and they're all like intricate in their own right, and they all do very special tasks. What is your obsession with cameras, Doug?
I gotta ask though, Doug. Hog cam, rat cam. Are you just putting cameras on hogs and rats? What are you doing?
Well, basically, but they're very, very unique because it's a very unique animal. Like, for instance, I was the first person to put a camera on wild dogs to see where are they going.
Wow.
Feral dogs, where do they live? How do they live their life? Because they got to make a living, in the city. And nobody really knows. They think they know, but they don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
And I love doing things. And like I've got a new great white shark cam I just got done with and developed, and I haven't used it yet. But already I've met some filmmakers that want to use it.
How are you going to get the camera on that shark?
Well, this is what's cool. We don't even have to touch the shark. It goes on the shark automatically.
How?
So we
let Doug worry about that, Michael.
We get two boats, two boats, and we lure a great white shark in, which isn't that hard to do, in between the boats using chum and a drag line. So then the shark comes in. I just drop this giant vest on it, and it goes on, and it's gravity, and then it reconnects at the bottom using neodymium magnets, and then it has, of course, the camera and the batteries. And then after I can set it for any amount of days, and the thing that holds the camera on and the vest on dissolves after you can pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. It dissolves, floats to the top, sets off a signal, and then it can be recovered. Then you can get the footage. And yeah, people have put cameras on great whites, but they're almost killing them and then putting the camera on them.
Yeah.
They're catching them on a hook, dragging them up on the boat, traumatizing them. There's blood every, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now they're expecting the shark to act normal.
Yeah.
So
sounds like what happens when you try to get Bryce out of his trailer onto set.
There you go. Exactly.
So, Doug, I mean, I know you've been, exploring things of the known universe. When did you start to get interested a little bit in cryptozoology or creatures and animals that were supposed to be living, but nobody really had proof? And tell us about that, how you captured the giant squid and took it from the annals of legend to the books of science. That's an amazing thing.
Well, boy, it's kind of a long story that's all connected in some weird ways. In fact, this book this guy's writing is called Monsters and Messengers because there's been a lot of coincidences that have happened to me that I can tell one really weird story. Okay, when I first got into if you guys want, like different information out of me, I'm willing to give it.
Great, good, yes.
Okay, so I wanted to get into the TV business, and you might ask, well, why? Just because I wanted to. I just thought it would be a really cool business, and I invented a polymer that allowed me to retire, basically have enough money where I could live, pay my bills, and I didn't have to do the normal day-to-day job, right? So I could get now into the TV business. So that's going on, and I just decided to get into the TV business, and I'm looking for someone to basically film a show on spec. I was working with some WWF wrestlers, and we had this idea for an outdoor show, some of these, and these guys are great. They're great stuntmen. They're a lot of them are brilliant. And I was working with a number of them. Mr. Perfect was one of them. He was my main partner.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted someone to do TV on spec. So I ran an ad basically in LA. A guy responded, said he would be happy to do a pilot, totally on spec, pay me when we sell it. So the guy, and I asked him, I said, well, when I finally met him and he had all this equipment, I just asked him, well, how did you afford all this stuff? Back then it was big money. And he said, well, I had a hit record at one time in the 60s. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. So he teaches me the business. We film our pilot. He's teaching me how to edit, shoot, all this stuff. Super great guy. And then when I finally landed another TV show, my first interview was with a guy who lived on Lake Superior up in Minnesota. Remember, one guy's from LA, one guy's from Minnesota, and the guy lived in a big mansion on Lake Superior. And I said to him, well, geez, this amazing home. This must have cost, millions of dollars. Where did you make all your money? What's the deal? He goes, well, he said, I had a hit record in the 60s. And I thought, well, that's weird. I swear to God, I heard that same story at one point. Anyhow, one day I was over at the other Greg's house. These guys both named Greg, right? And I said to him, I said, do you know Greg Bambenek? And he goes, yeah, he was in our band. He was our bass player.
Wow.
I said, you're kidding me. I said, what are the chances that I meet both of you guys independently from this band called Michael and the Messengers?
Wow.
And
serendipitous, man.
And I go, when's the last time you talked to Greg? He goes, oh my God, 30, 40 years. We lost touch. I said, just a second. I called the one Greg and I handed him the phone. But so that's just one example of coincidences. Both these people had a huge effect on my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I ended up becoming really good friends with Greg Bambenek, who actually was the guy who even developed the Bigfoot scent chips.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
I could tell you a ton of coincidences even with these two guys, right? But Greg ended up doing a number of MonsterQuest shows. We ended up doing a lot of projects together, including the Benthic Explorer, because he was one of the scientists that was doing research using the Benthic,
Right.
So
what's a Bigfoot sense? Well, I'm sorry, what did you call it? A Bigfoot sense?
The pheromone sense.
Like
Have
a
you heard of
pheromone.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
I was thinking SENSE, not SCE.
Well, these are these sex pheromones that a lot of researchers have been using for the last 20 years.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And,
Michael Doug is like old school. He helped Michael Fenner Herrenbach develop the gold standard for Bigfoot hair. Am I saying his name right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
legend meets science. Doug is intricately connected to Bigfoot research and the phenomenon.
I go
it's
back
incredible,
to the early
man.
guys. I remember, obviously with John Green, we used to talk almost every day on the phone.
Wow.
To give you an example,
Whoa.
That's a trip. Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot.
I know
of
you
these
knew Peter Byrne as well, and all
No,
these.
I've never met Peter.
Oh, that's right.
Personally, but Peter definitely played a role in my first Bigfoot experience.
Wow.
Because he was the first person I contacted when I was up in the Arctic and found footprints, which leads me to my interest in Bigfoot.
Well,
So I was up in the Arctic doing another wildlife show, and I had seen a 6-foot-long lake trout. Saw it with my own eyes. It was chasing probably a 40-inch lake trout that I was reeling in, and this other one was 72 inches. And the guide saw it. We all saw it in the boat, and I go, oh my God, that was like, I thought it was a guy swimming in the water after my fish.
Mhm.
When it was that big, it looked like a man. And he goes, oh, we see those all the time, but he said they're too big to catch. So then I started thinking about, well, how did this one trout get so big? And then I came to the conclusion that it just got out of its niche. Because I had read about fish and, how some fish, the only way they ever get big is to get out of their niche. And I think it was the Linders that it was a book I had read on fisheries that they had first coined that for big northern pike. And so I remembered that and thought, oh, maybe this trout just got out of its niche. It's probably a female, never laid eggs, never bred, just stays down at the bottom and becomes a cannibal.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, and then I went back up to the Arctic to actually get footage of one of these giant behemoths, brought a fisheries biologist up there, and then we had stopped just to go, once again, a coincidence. I had to pee at the exact right time. So
Nature
He's a wolf
called.
brother now. Yeah.
yeah, but it called me.
Another synchronicity.
But it was that exact reason that changed not only my life, but I could tell you countless thousands and thousands of other people.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of weird if you think about it. So I have to go to the bathroom, decide it's too windy and too rough on the lake because we're on this really big lake. We're on Selwyn Lake. And
you know what, Doug? But I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
Right as you're about to take a potty break, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to find out what it was that you saw in the Arctic that changed not only your life, but countless others. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with DOUG HAIJCEK. DOUG, so you're in the Arctic. You're going to the bathroom at a synchronicitous time, Wolf Brother style. Now, what is it that you see that has changed your life and so many others?
Yeah. So anyhow, speaking of breaks, of course, I wanted to go to shore because I didn't want to pee all over myself from the wind and the waves. So we go to shore, find a nice little calm bay, pull in, and it's kind of like, almost like the Caribbean in some parts of the Arctic. It's very sandy, sand eskers, very gin clear water, kind of like you'd find in the Caribbean. And we get out of the boat and hear our footprints coming out of the lake.
Yeah.
Literally, like something either swam and then, walked. It came out of the lake, walked through the sand where you can get the clearest footprints, went into the pea gravel where they were really deep. Then into the moss, with the tundra type moss that's quite soft, but they were very, very deep. And then in front of a tree that was a stunted black spruce tree, one footprint's in front and one footprint's directly behind it, which meant it walked over the tree.
Wow.
And at that point, I am very familiar with bear tracks. I knew they weren't bear. Everybody knew they weren't bear. We tried to duplicate the depth, and it was even damp and raining. It was drizzling when we were there.
Wow.
We couldn't even come close. We had a 300-pound guy who jumped off a rock and couldn't even put a dent in the pea gravel. Then we went beyond those trees, and there in the horizon was a straight line of these tracks really far apart. And obviously, I came back. I did a story for the news up there because I had a journalist with me. We filmed a story called Mysteries of the North that ran on an NBC affiliate in Minneapolis.
Yeah. Now, had you heard of, I mean, what did you think when you saw those prints? I mean, had you heard of, or did you know obviously about Bigfoot? I mean, what were you thinking when you saw that?
Well, at one point we were actually thinking dinosaur.
Wow.
Whoa.
I mean, we're not, you got to realize how big these tracks were and how deep.
Were they three-toed? Do they appear to be three-toed? Or
No, they had five toes, but for some reason, Bigfoot never jumped into my brain.
Yeah.
I think because of where we were, and we're so far north and, there's not many trees. And I didn't really think, I didn't know a ton about Bigfoot at that point, very little. I'd seen the Patterson footage, when I was a kid, but that was about it. But then I went back and looked at the ones in the sand, and I filmed all those tracks. And I would love to get my hands on that footage again. But the news, they recycle all the footage.
Right.
So to them, it was just another dumb news story, and they just, threw it in their bin when it was over. But anyhow, so then when I went back, and then I started thinking, God, this looks like human, but giant. And then I'm starting to think Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And I remember after we saw the tracks going over the tree, I think there was one or two people in our party that said, it's time to go.
Wow. Yeah. No kidding. Right.
Yeah. That they literally did not want to run into whatever made those tracks. So I came back and I just, once again, then the curiosity kid
I was
came
going to say, yeah.
I want answers.
This is the ultimate curiosity quest, right? You're like, okay, I mean, this is like the holy grail of undiscovered because this is a link to who we are. This is part of our own human story, whether it's our past or our present or even our future. I can only imagine how must have seeing those tracks took a hold of you. I mean, because my interest in Bigfoot only came from just watching a cool TV show, probably like one you would have produced, like, In Search of, seeing Leonard Nimoy talk about the Patterson Gimlin. But to see it out in the wild and in the forest and fresh tracks like that must have really made, for lack of a better word, an impression on you.
Oh, it did. I mean, the whole thing was, it was definitely life-changing. Yeah. And then I get a hold of Matt. After I'd sent I sent a tape, a VHS tape, to Peter Byrne of the tracks. And he wrote back. He got back to me, and he mentioned something that there was a sighting near that lake in like the 1800s that he had documented.
Wow.
This is Matt Moneymaker from the BFRO.
No. Peter Byrne first.
Peter Byrne.
Told me about a sighting.
Yes.
I sent the tape to Peter, and then I got a hold of Matt.
I see. Yeah.
And then Matt's is so matter of fact. If you obviously you know about Matt, and you know Matt, he's like, oh, these things are anywhere there's woods, water, and hills. And I'm like, oh, really? And he's filling me in, and he's doing the Matt on me, and he's just he really got my interest. I like, oh my God. So Matt, my interest went from really crazy to beyond crazy.
That's the thing about this subject, I think, is, there's this surface layer of knowing about Bigfoot, but once you really start to look into it, it gets deeper and deeper. And, there's so much credible information, evidence, testimony about it that you can only be lured in by just the believability factor in and of itself. One thing I love about you, Doug, is, you are a very scientific minded guy, but I also, think you're a guy who doesn't dismiss what I call the stranger aspects of Bigfootery.
No, I don't. No.
And I guess I kind of want to ask you, what do you think about all these strange things that seem to be commonly associated with Bigfoot, whether it's these orbs of light, this idea of camouflage or cloaking, or even this idea of mind speak, being able to communicate just from mind to mind. What's going on here, do you think?
You really dumped out all the Legos there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Bryce?
Yeah, good job, Bryce.
I saw the clock running, and I was like, damn, we only have so much time. We got to bust into this one.
Well, first off, I'm willing to go as long as you guys, if you want to do a little part 2. So don't worry about me.
That's great.
Okay. So, first off, I've never experienced any mind speak, but I know guys like even Les Stroud has kind of talked a little bit about something he thinks maybe. I don't think he's definite on it, but he's experienced something. Other people have, that I know have experienced things. Certainly I've talked to people who have experienced extreme fear, like they're in the woods and they're chopping wood or they're whatever, and they're hearing this voice saying, you need to get out of the woods now.
Yeah, right, right.
So, and I don't discount any of that. I'm open-minded. I've only had a couple of things that I can't explain. I've definitely experienced their wrath, like the force that seems supernatural strength. I've been in cabins that have been lifted off the foundation and rocked, which seems supernatural almost. Like, how in the world can a primate be that strong?
Wow. So it almost feels like it's a poltergeist or something rocking the house or lifting the house from its foundation.
It just makes you question your own sanity because you're like, how can a cabin that's up on, it's up on blocks.
Yeah.
But how can a creature be that big and strong?
Well,
and then I kind of oscillate back and forth. I go, well, you realize how, a chimpanzee is 10 times stronger than we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can grab somebody and, tear their hand off.
Right.
And
but
then you start thinking,
I feel you. You're asking, how could it be so strong? How do these tracks end in the middle of nowhere? How could there be, 25 different subspecies of these creatures all over the world and on every continent, Well,
I just like to ask questions.
Yeah.
So I like to answer these doubts or questions with questions. Right. How can it be? I was in a cabin one time with my son, my daughter, and my best friend, and the cabin got shoved so hard that the bed that I was in, including my daughter's bed, flew away from the wall.
Wow.
Okay.
Now, where was this?
Cabin. This is up in the edge of the Boundary Waters canoe area.
Wow.
It's another cabin, another remote cabin we were doing research at.
Wow. And you were there doing research
so hard that the bed moved away from the wall. I've never heard my daughter swear ever. That night, she looked at me and said, "What the F?"
Wow.
And she was like 10.
Now, did you get a sense when you're in a situation like that, which sounds absolutely terrifying, are you getting the sense that this thing wants to come in and get you or is telling you to get out?
I think it's more of a grand finale of strength. They seem to, I don't care if you're in a tent. I've experienced all of the above. I've been in campers when this has happened. I've been in tents. I've been sleeping out on the ground, just, no tent. I've experienced this grand finale they do, which is to kind of screw around with your camp. And then right as the moment they're leaving, they do like the gorilla slaps the window and runs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen footage of that. That's what they seem to do. Like, oh, really? You want to see how strong I am? Bam, but I'm out of here because I don't want to have a confrontation.
Right.
I don't want you to come out and shoot me. Or I don't want, you know what I mean? I'm afraid of you. And so I think they operate on fear. And so, no, I don't think that they would come in and, kill me. I don't think I ever really felt, well, I can't say that. At Snelgrove, I actually felt like I was going to die. And I thought my daughter, Dakota, was in danger at that time. And that we were all in danger.
That was that cabin, the one
yes.
with the bed.
Yes. But at the end, we all walked away. So
we did an episode. So for our listeners, we did an episode of High Strangeness on the Snelgrove Lake incident, where you and Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, were researching Bigfoots literally in the middle of nowhere, and it was sort of using this cabin or whatnot. But it's an incredible story. It's so amazing. Let's see. What was I gonna say with that? Oh yeah. To me, this thing of not harming humans because there's been so many encounters. To me, it sort of represents this high sign of intelligence. Almost maybe, if these creatures are intelligent and gather in social groups, like I think they may, if they're flesh and blood creatures, then perhaps there was this pact agreed not to harm humans, or at least in a way that they could catch you, because there is this nefarious phenomenon of people going missing in these national forests. And maybe there's something there on the other side of the coin that says, maybe these creatures can harm. I mean, I don't know, but I know there's something going on there.
Right. For all we know, there's a certain time of year the males get really aggressive and protective. Or maybe it's, one individual that just roams around and it's a killer.
Right.
Because you got to realize, okay, let's take black bears. Well, we have Minnesota's got 40,000 black bears, about, give or take 10,000. So we have a bunch of black bears, but yet most years go by, there's no black bear attacks. And that's a lot of black bears, right? To avoid attacking people. But there's bluff charging. There's things that they do. The teeth clacking. They'll blow at you. And some people will shoot them thinking they're about to be attacked, but they're not. They're just very noisy. If a black bear is making noise, generally you're safe. Even taking their cubs away from them. If they're being noisy and blowing and teeth clacking, we've actually taken cubs away from the mother. I've been there. But right next to him, holding my camera while a scientist is actually pulling the cubs away from a wild mother. And she's mad and she's upset and she's stomping the ground but she ain't doing anything. So now let's say there's 4,000 Bigfoots in North America, and that includes Canada, or less. It's kind of a numbers game.
Yeah, I'm interested. Why do you say 4,000?
I don't know. I'm going by all the sightings that I get in my research areas. And I take that by, what's unique about that area, how many areas are like this. And it's just kind of a simple mathematics problem. It's sixth grade level.
He's mapping out the sewers, Michael. Come on.
Well, I mean, I was doing second grade level math in sixth grade, so don't ask me about numbers.
But I just, I think that there's certainly thousands of them. Let's say it is only 2,000. Let's say it's only 1,500 or 500 even.
Sure.
It's still enough maybe to be a viable breeding population. But I'm sticking, if I was a betting man and I had to make a bet, I would bet 4,000 in all of North America. Okay. That's kind of where my bet, it's kind of guess how many jelly beans are in the jar.
I think it's a good guess. I really do.
Yeah. It's like, whatever, I could be way off or I might be dead on, or it could be more for all we know.
I mean, 4,000 isn't that
many, so that does, that makes sense.
No, because if you think most people in Minnesota, I would say 80% of the people have never seen a black bear. And there's, 40,000 of them living here. So, it's like a fourth. So if there were only 4,000 black bears, obviously the people that would have sightings in Minnesota would be very, very low. It would be super low. But it seems like every third person I talk to has had a sighting or an experience or has a close friend or a relative that's had a sighting. And, I just think there's so many people that never come forward, guys.
Yeah. That was what I was going to say. Yeah. We don't even know all the reports because people don't want to sound crazy.
Once again, we're guessing and we're in that lukewarm water. We're just guessing.
Yeah.
What percentage of people report their sightings?
Well, there's an old great story from Stanton Friedman. Do you know who he is? He was that nuclear physicist.
He was a good friend of mine, actually.
Oh, no way.
Of course.
Oh, of course he was. Of course he was. He tells a story where he was at a UFO symposium and he would ask the audience, how many people here out of, let's say, a crowd of 100 have seen a UFO? And maybe about 10% of the crowd would raise their hand. And he would say, okay, great. Now, out of those 10%, keep your hands up. How many of you actually reported it? And about 7 to 8 of those hands went down, left with only 1 or 2,
Yeah.
And so out of all those 10% of people who actually see things, only 1% report. And I think the same might be true for Bigfoot eyewitnesses. I think there's so many reportings and sightings that people are just not even going to bother with reporting. They don't want to be ridiculed or.
Well, most of the sightings are very uneventful and quick.
Yeah, right.
So there's nothing to report. I saw a black thing, just the tail end of it as it crossed the last 3 feet of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I just seeing things, whatever. It was a guy.
Right.
Those kind of sightings. And even the one I had up in Mille Lacs, where we were only about 4 feet away, 5 feet away from it, and we had it in the headlights, there's still days I'm like, doubt, even though I had a witness.
Yeah,
you still
right.
do the self-doubt.
Tell us about that moment.
Oh, we were just unexpected, of course, driving back from up north in Minnesota along Mille Lacs Lake, one of the biggest lakes in Minnesota. You can't see across it. It's so big. And we see, as we're coming up on the road in my headlights, in the high beams, we see something like, we think it's a moose with its butt facing us and its antlers waving back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
We get closer and I was like, well, that ain't a moose. What is that? An elk doing that? And then I'm like, holy crap, this is way bigger than a moose. And then we're seeing fingers and then we can see the arm and the hair hanging off the arms and it's waving its arms like a hula. And then we see the wind blowing against its fur or its hair. And it looks like it's drying off in the wind. And it's waving its arms to help facilitate drying quicker.
Wow.
So when it goes back in the forest, you can almost kind of figure out what's going on just by looking at it. Because what would I do if I had come out of a hot, humid forest, came out for a nice, cool swim? What would I do before I went back into the humid forest? I would dry off.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It wasn't complicated. But man, did we get a good look at this thing. I mean, we could see its fingers really well. And like I said, we're 5 feet from it.
Did you see its face? Did it react to the being in the headlights? Yeah. If
it would have been looking at us, I think at that point, it would have been, I would have had to wipe my seat off.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was already shocking enough for both of us to see what we saw. And then to see the face would have been a whole nother ball game. That would have been level 2.
Yeah,
I was at
kidding.
level 1. Level 2 would have been way worse.
It's probably
Wow.
hard to subscribe to the supernatural Bigfoot idea when you see a creature like that on the side of the road out in its
Yeah, of
environment,
course.
standing there like a moose, and just it being
And drying,
natural.
using
Drying off.
wind to
using
dry
the
itself.
wind to dry off. You're like, oh, that's animal/humanistic behavior. This thing is as
Right. If it
real
had
as my.
magical powers, guys,
Yeah.
why would it need to dry off in the wind? And why
You
would
ever
it
seen
need-
Gandalf use a bath towel? No.
No.
Doug, what do you think about all these dogman reportings, these wolfman? What's going on with that? 'Cause are you into the paranormal at all?
Oh,
Like, what's
Sure,
your
of course.
interest in that?
I study
Yeah.
it because it's a mystery.
Yeah.
And since I've opened my mind a little bit more, for some odd reason, I've experienced with Yvette numerous things that we can't explain.
Wow.
In fact, to the point where she will not travel with me on my
Oh my
adventures
God.
any longer.
You seem like a
There's
guy
no
we
way.
talk about this all the time on our podcast. Do you know who
Yeah.
John Keel was, the famed
Of
Fortean
course. Yeah, of
investigator?
course.
He often used to say, once you start looking into this phenomenon, it will start looking back at you. You seem like a guy who the phenomenon's like, this guy's got a lot of fucking cameras. So we're gonna keep our eyes on Doug HAIJCEK.
Oh,
All
we've-
kinds of stuff seems to happen to you.
We've seen things. Probably one of the weirdest things we ever saw was driving back from Cloquet, Minnesota. Beautiful evening, full moon, not a cloud in the sky, stars out. And we're driving along on 35W, and we see something drop out of the sky like a spider
Wow.
and stop abruptly. You know when a spider just does that drop on his web?
Yeah.
He spins it and drops, and boom, and he just like bounces when he gets to as far as he wants to go. So it does that, and then it starts heading right for my windshield. And
Now,
it
is this
comes
a
close.
light?
Yeah. No, it was reflection from the moon. In the ambient light, we could see the shine on this thing. It wasn't putting out any light at all. And all of a sudden, it's coming towards my car, kind of like 7 feet up, heading right for the windshield directly. To the point where you can hardly see movement because it's coming directly towards us. So we see the down movement, we see the stop, it's coming directly at us, and then it gets closer to the windshield. That's when Yvette ducked. That's when I'm thinking, I need to duck. 'Cause it's coming through the windshield. And of course, I look at it, she looks at it, and we see what we can only describe as a gargoyle.
What?
Bat-like wings.
Shut
And of
up.
course, I tell my friends, the people I know. I remember the first guy I told was my agent.
Wow.
And I said, in MonsterQuest, we've always refused to do these winged humanoid things that we keep getting asked to do. I said, I'm all in now.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, we had our own sighting. I had my eyewitness. And he goes, oh, you must have seen an owl.
Oh,
And I'm like, Dale, I said, the wings went across the entire width of the freeway. It was not an owl. It was not a crane. I could see its face, its eyes, its ears.
What did
And
it
then
look
I
like? What did
It
those
looked
face? What did the
like-
face look like?
It looked, I hate to use the word evil, but it looked like a gargoyle,
Yeah.
like a bat-like face, kind of shiny skin, no feathers, bone. You could see the bone structure in the wings.
What color of eyes?
Blacker than black. Yep. No
Right.
reflection, no light. And then, so you have to understand how life-changing that is. Because
I would not want to go back out with you after that. I
no,
don't
you
know.
wouldn't even want, no, trust me, guys. You wouldn't
Yeah.
you wouldn't even want to accommodate me when I go take the garbage out.
This podcast might be enough, right? We're like, oh my gosh.
So
Oh.
it becomes a little mind altering.
Yeah.
And, I could go on because, like, me and Yvette have seen so many things together. Thank God. We've always had a witness. But, like, the last thing we saw that was really odd were two bright pink, Pepto-Bismol pink orbs that were fairly high when we first saw them. And then we pulled over because they were so bright pink. There were two of them traveling together. I pulled over and they came, of course, these pink orbs come right to our car. right over the windshield. And then, of course, one zips up and the one blinked off.
Are we talking basketball size here?
Yeah,
how big?
about basketball. That's kind of would be my guess. But bright pink, like really fluorescent pink.
Doug,
never seen a light in the sky.
Did you have any of these experiences that you recall when you were a kid at all?
Actually, no. This is what's interesting, because I never slept inside. I don't care, from age, I would say probably about age 8 through my entire teens in the summer, not one night inside.
Yeah.
In many cases, out under the stars, never saw a UFO, never saw an orb, saw satellites occasionally, but we knew they were satellites. The only weird thing that ever happened in that many years was one time we were walking around in my neighborhood, and we came upon one of my teachers' homes. And we saw the lights inside the home on the upstairs and the ground floor blinking and strobing in very unique, random ways. And me and my buddy sat and watched that, and it was so bizarre. It was like blink, like lightning was going off in their home.
Weird.
Upstairs in this bedroom, this room, but all over.
Whoa.
And we watched that for quite a while, and then it stopped. That was the only weird thing I ever saw when I was a kid.
Yeah. And so, do you feel like the moment it clicked on was when you found those tracks in the Arctic?
Yeah. I mean, I had some things occasionally through the years, but not many. You pretty much felt like life was normal. But as I got older, more and more things started happening. But I still don't associate any of them to Bigfoot. If other people hearing my story want to associate them, fine. I mean, even up at Snell, we've seen orbs and numerous. Yeah. Like every year, we'd always see at least one orb, that would end up going right into the forest or above the treetops. And one time we saw a red one, and that was the one my son was with, Josh. My oldest son was with on that trip. And we saw a red orb come off an island right in front of the cabin, go up right to about tree level above, and then sink back down. Wow. And look, it was the exact color of a taillight on a car, which, of course, in the middle of a lake, hundreds of miles from the nearest road is not likely.
Right.
So there you go. I mean, but things happen far enough apart where you still think life's normal until all of a sudden you go, that wasn't normal.
Yeah. You're speaking of two people that have had situations like that happen to them. So I get that. I'm curious, sidetracking just slightly, but sure. in the areas where you've, like Snelgrove, or some of these areas where you've encountered perhaps Sasquatch or orbs, any stories of women in white walking in the woods or on the side of the road, any weird ghost stories that pop out at you, or any strange phenomenon like screams or babies crying, anything like that?
I've heard lots of screams, and I mean, I've heard the screams up close within feet of me, them making the screams, like at Snell. I mean, it sounded like they were killing each other. Actually, like they were arguing. It sounded like they were arguing amongst themselves. If that makes sense. Or screaming, they're like two parents screaming at a kid, freaking out, panicking, is kind of what it reminded me of. And then there's running on the roof at Snell.
Jeez.
Was there a juvenile up on the roof and these things were trying to get the juvenile down? I don't know, but that's what I envisioned, because that's what it sounded like.
That's so weird.
And then the rocking of the cabin, it all kind of smacked of, there was a juvenile that leaped up on the roof.
Right. Right.
Based on me flicking on a solar powered light in the complete pitch darkness, and all of a sudden me lighting up facing the forest. And that's when all the screaming started. But I've experienced, in fact, even when I was a kid, one time I did hear a scream in the woods that sounded like basically a woman being murdered, but with a low voice. Like a woman, like a 12-foot tall woman
Jeez.
Right.
being murdered. Could have been maybe a lynx, but I doubt it because back in those days, man, we didn't have anything. You never saw an eagle, a deer, a lynx, Bob. You saw nothing. There was no wildlife when I was a kid. It was all killed. There was non-existent.
You mean killed by people or
Yeah, there was no people don't
predators?
realize there was no wildlife in the 60s and 70s. There was none.
I've never heard this before. I would think it would be less now than it was then.
Oh my
Just
god!
because everyone was hunting.
God. There was no big game status, for instance, for bears, so they were slaughtered. There was no eagles; they were all dead from DDT and poisons. There were no birds of prey. There were no hardly any birds. They were all dead. There were no songbirds. I see red cardinals now every day, goldfinches, blue jays. When I was a kid, we never saw one because there weren't any. All the songbirds would all migrate down to South America, even when we quit using DDT, and they would die down there. And so they would never make it back to Minnesota, to migrate up here. There was no deer. When somebody saw a deer in the 70s, or the 60s, late 60s, it would make the paper.
Wow. Let that sink in. That's wild. I never knew that.
Oh my God. And then the wildlife has been coming back. There were no wild turkeys. I can't drive 2 blocks without seeing 50 wild turkeys.
Yeah.
Fox, coyotes, deer everywhere, eagles soaring all over. We see 2-3 eagles. Every time I go to the gas station, I see 2-3 eagles. There was nothing. I used to drive from Minneapolis to Key West, like every other week sometimes, way back. Never saw anything. Never even saw a deer. Never saw a bird of prey. You think about that. I mean, that's, 2,000 miles. And to not see one animal in 2,000-mile trip there and back. That's how rare wildlife was back in the old days. Now people have no idea. It's way more now.
That's a nice reminder that conservation and protection of wildlife programs do in fact work, and that, things can look up. When the world can seem so dim and glum at sometimes, it's good to know that, we are pulling ourselves up and the animals too.
Oh my God.
In some degrees,
The other thing too that you guys maybe aren't aware of, because no one's ever talked about it, is the air is so clean now compared to when I was a kid.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard that about Los Angeles for sure.
Oh my God, it's night and day. I mean, all of our carbureted cars, there was so much gas fumes that went off in the air, and exhaust
and lead.
You smelled nothing but gas fumes when you drove in a car. You smell like a gasoline station when you got out of a car in the old days.
Wow.
No wonder you wanted to go out in the woods.
And everybody, oh my God! And then everybody burned their garbage every night.
I love the smell of gasoline. That would explain a lot.
And then in the cities and the suburbs, everybody burned all their trash, plastic, spray cans, everything got burned every night, and the whole sky filled with black smoke.
Wow!
So you smelled. You went to sleep every night breathing in thick, nasty, toxic smoke. Okay,
man.
So, people have no idea. The air is like I would guess 100 times cleaner than the 60s and 70s now.
Amazing. That's great. Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Way to go, us.
Maybe the closer we get, maybe actually then Bigfoot will come out of the woods and hang out with us.
You keep doing your part and I'll do mine. I'll finally lay down on a lab table for you.
Well, that's the other thing. Even lakes are cleaner. The water's cleaner. People think it isn't. They're wrong. It's so much cleaner. Everything.
Well, one thing is for certain, Doug, we are going to need to have you back because I feel like we've barely even just scratched the surface with you.
I mean, you proved that giant squid exist. We didn't even get to that.
It's amazing.
It's fun. There's obviously lots of things we can discuss. No doubt.
you seem like the type of guy that we really like talking to and admire. You're out there, pursuing and following your dreams, doing scientific work, but also, helping to look into these stranger aspects that inhabit our planet. And man, we so enjoyed talking to you. Doug,
we live in an amazing world.
We live in such an amazing world, and you're helping to show us that. We know where we can find. We don't know where we can find Bigfoot out in the woods, but Doug, where can people find you and some of your work today?
Well, probably the best thing to do is to get a hold of me. If they want to get a hold of me, is on Facebook. They can message me. And then, we have a podcast every Wednesday called Untold Radio.
Yes.
People can join the chat room and talk to me directly every Wednesday. I've got a number of projects going with Legend Science 2 being filmed right now. And
that's incredible.
Being worked on. And so, we've got a lot of cool things coming down the pike.
Amazing. Man. Well, when that comes out, when that's ready, we'll have you back on the show and discuss that and get back into it, because I know our listeners are loving this conversation.
No doubt about it.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, it was good meeting you guys, and thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I hope that book gets made. It needs to get made. I want to read that. I'm pre-ordering right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, we'll get your name written down.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Doug. We really appreciate having you on the show. Wow.
That is wild, man.
That guy's my hero now.
I know. I feel like I forgot to. Now I can include experiencer amongst his many titles of super producer, inventor, camera inventor. The guy also sounds like he's experienced all types of high strangeness.
This guy's getting rocked in a cabin by Bigfoot. He's having gargoyles flying at his car. He's seeing Pepto-Bismol orbs.
Oh, God. I got to ask you, so like if we've talked about it before, if Robert Bigelow is like the Tony Stark of the UFO world, Doug HAIJCEK's got to be in there somewhere, right?
Oh, easily he is the Reed Richards, a.k.a. Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. He's inventing things. He's going to strange worlds. His wife is tagging along. It's complete. His kids are there. 100% Reed Richards,
Amazing.
Absolutely. He's Mr. Fantastic. Also just what a great guy. I mean, we absolutely have to get him back on the show. That was a blast. And I hope you guys thought the same. Well, that's it for this week. We want to thank Doug one last time. Bryce, do you have anything to plug before we amscray?
Absolutely, I do. Just keep watching Expedition Bigfoot. We are in season 3, which is premiering right now on the Travel Channel Sunday nights, 10/9 Central, as well as streaming on Discovery Plus. You are not going to want to miss it. We are getting into the strange.
That's right. And if you're watching and you want to hear Bryce talk more in depth about the show, like I said, we're going to be doing that over on the other side all season long. Let's see. I have another podcast all about being an actor in Hollywood. You can hear me interview with actors, including some past favorite guests from this show on Slate Your Name, which drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts. All right, we're going to head over to the other side right now. As a matter of fact, we'll see some of you there on Friday. For everybody else, we'll see you next time. Until then,
good night and go get regressed.
I was supposed to say goodnight, wasn't I?
Yeah, I know.
I'm thinking about gargoyles now.
I know. I was like... Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray and Michael McMillan and scored and engineered by Riley Bray. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. Do us a favor and support the show and unlock 3 bonus episodes every month by becoming a member of our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, which can be found at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub.